Thank you for pressing start on episode 43 of Underplayed, KZUM's indie video game podcast. Today we have 2 secret games followed by a review of our featured game, Cuphead. Here on Underplayed, we review indie games of all kinds. The games with small budgets but big hearts, the lesser-known experiences with imaginative ideas. Welcome. I'm Bopo, and joining me is my player 2, playing games he wants to review. He's the Indiepedia with physical media. I'm talking about the start pressin', secret game guessing, holding your controller, DiscoCola. What is going on?
Well, Bopo, it's pretty hot on this day that we're recording this, so you might say I'm a bit steamed, but I'm here with you on our last regular review of the season, so my cup runneth over. How are you?
I'm doing just fine, my froggy slot machine. Those are references to our featured game, Cuphead, which is a game I actually saw you playing earlier today. I opened up my PlayStation app on my phone, and I can see people that I'm friends with on there playing games. I actually saw you playing just maybe an hour or 2 ago. Is that right?
I mean, I mostly had it open to remind myself of some things. I wasn't really playing much.
Okay.
I did do one of the pacifist runs, though, in this last play session.
Nice.
So.
And so that's where you're playing one of the run and gun stages without hurting any enemies?
Yes.
Nice. So you're working on the 100% of that game.
Working on some trophy cleanup.
Well, that'll be a fun game to talk about because every season we're going to have a co-op game, and Cuphead was this season's co-op game, which we streamed on Twitch. We'll talk about all of our thoughts about the game, both from a co-op and solo perspective. It'll be a lot of fun. And this is our last normal episode of the season. Next time, we will be doing our Season 4 recap and reflection, and we're also going to follow that up by selecting our lineup of featured games for Season 5. So this is something we do at the end of every season. We take a look back before looking ahead. So looking forward to that. And then I also, here at the top, I wanted to touch on something that kind of is on the heels of learning that The Big Con, which is a game you reviewed back in Season 1, is coming to PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
Which I never expected it to come to PlayStation after a couple
this
years.
amount of time. Yeah.
So, and we also talked briefly last time in the Toem episode about how Toem was released a year or 2 ago, but just like last month, it was released on Xbox consoles. Mm-hmm. And so I love when games get ported and more people can enjoy the games that we love. And there are tons of games that we have reviewed on this show in the past that have been ported to new systems of all kinds. So I just wanted to run through this list. I went ahead and searched for all of the games that we've talked about up to this point. So this is Season 1 through now, basically. So going chronologically, Maquette, a secret game of mine from Season 1, got ported to Switch and Xbox consoles. So that's nice.
Nice.
The Big Con, as we just mentioned, coming to PlayStation 5.
Yep.
Bug Snacks. This one's fun because this came to Switch, Xbox consoles, and just last month, it came to iOS.
Oh.
Which I think we saw an announcement of this online on social media.
Maybe,
but,
yeah.
There's just a flurry of news that we've been seeing the past few months, so I kind of forgot about this one, but that's cool. Sky Children of the Light is very soon coming to PC via Steam. So I thought that was interesting. I actually kind of expected it to already be on Steam, but I guess it's not. But it'll be free to play, just like the console version. Then we have several games that got PS5 ports. So Carrion got a PS5 port. Fury and The Gardens Between got a PS5 port. So this is the same game basically being ported. All these games, are appearing on PS4. Now they have a PS5 trophy stack, technically a separate version of the game. Before Your Eyes, which is still in Season 1.
That's a hard one to port.
It is, but at one point it came to Android and iOS, and earlier this year it came to PlayStation VR 2. Outer Wilds. This is one we both loved. This is out on PS5 and Xbox Series X and S. So they basically, did versions of that game for the new consoles. Here's one I didn't expect to come back. What Remains of Edith Finch got an Xbox Series X and S port as well as a PS5 port.
Excellent.
So another stack of trophies there. Love this next one. Unpacking is coming very soon to phones and tablets. I think by the time this episode is out, those versions might be released. And I think that game just fits.
Good place for it. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
One we both loved as well, Stray, is now out on Xbox consoles with a Mac version coming. So pretty much everyone gets to enjoy Stray now. Love that. Solar Ash is coming to Xbox consoles soon. There's no date on that, but it is announced. Chicory: A Colorful Tale came to Xbox consoles earlier this year. And Toem, as we mentioned last time, came to Xbox consoles just about a month ago as we sit down to record this episode.
And you mentioned to me that there's sort of rumblings, whispers, maybe even that House might be potentially getting a port to consoles.
Yes, I didn't want to include that one in the list because I saw something that suggested that in an Instagram story.
Yeah.
But I didn't see
Nothing
anything
definitive,
concrete.
yeah.
But I think if they're going to announce that, it will be by the end of this year. And I think it also mentioned a sequel to House and console version. So I would maybe halfway expect that to happen.
And then another one that didn't get ported but came back, I found out last night, Mighty Number 9 is back on the PlayStation Store.
Oh, really?
Yes. I don't remember if I looked for it ahead of our recording or ahead of the season or not. But I do know that at one point it was not on the PlayStation Store anymore, but it is there now, so including all of the DLC.
Wow, so it got delisted. And did we have an official reason why it became delisted?
No,
like on digital stores?
I have no reason why, because it was still on like Wii U of all things.
Yeah, I'm pulling open the PlayStation app right now, and it has a store page, but it says not available for purchase.
Oh, maybe that is what.
Maybe
it is.
We're like working on getting it back, or I don't know if it like completely disappeared at some point.
But I was in the store last night and it was there, including the
price
DLC
tag?
Packs. I don't remember. I didn't look for a price tag, but
interesting. Well, hopefully they've figured that out soon. But you can see it on the store,
which
so
I don't think I could before.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I think that is something.
I do know you can still buy it on Steam, and when it's on sale, it's $2. So that's nice. So yeah, we might revisit past games and just give updates on games that get new ports. But that was several seasons worth of games. So I don't imagine it happening again soon. It takes time for these things to come out. So, and hey, if you're listening to Underplayed right now, thank you so much. And we love you. Please consider giving us a follow and a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you haven't already. It takes a few seconds and goes a long way. Let's move on to our secret games.
Secret games. Secret games. Secret games. Secret games.
In Secret Games, we each review an indie game we've been playing in secret these past few weeks, and we don't discuss what we're playing in advance. We keep them a surprise for this very moment. We can choose any indie game as long as we haven't reviewed it on Underplayed before. We'll start with you, DiscoCola. Let the mystery be no more. Reveal your last secret game for Season 4 here on episode 43 of Underplayed.
My secret game this episode comes from Indie Creates, and it's called Galgun.
I'm going to believe you.
Volt Burst. My secret game is Gunvolt Burst.
Is that seriously what it's called?
That's seriously the game that I played.
Gunvolt Burst?
Yes, and I have just sent you a trailer for that game.
Okay, I will take a peek while you talk about Gunvolt Burst.
So, Gunvolt Burst, or known on most platforms as Mighty Gunvolt Burst. I played it on PlayStation, and on PlayStation, it is called Gunvolt Burst. But
interesting.
For the purposes of the joke, I really wanted to make sure that worked. But for the purposes of the episode and
title?
moving forward, yes, I will
we'll
call
refer to it as Mighty.
Gunvolt Burst.
Okay.
So
Yeah, and the inside joke being that DiscoCola was joking that his secret game was Galgun
yeah.
for some reason for a couple of episodes.
If you knew what Galgun was, you would understand.
Okay. So it's an inside joke with yourself.
Why I would not. Well, or anyone who knows what Galgun is.
Okay.
I'm not playing Galgun for Underplayed. It is not appropriate.
It's not appropriate. Okay.
It's not appropriate.
I was not in on that this whole time. So I'm glad, I appreciate the context.
You can look it up and it will take you about 4 seconds to realize why we will not probably talk about Galgun.
Well, now I'm just going to be looking up Galgun during your review. I'm going to be so distracted. Oh, okay. Wait, I got to look up images here. Let's see. Okay.
Yeah.
It's very similar to Lost Ruins, maybe.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, but
in
maybe
a certain way.
Excessive.
Yeah. Okay, even more excessive.
It may be the point of the game.
Gotcha.
So Mighty Gunvolt Burst is actually a sequel to the game Mighty Gunvolt, which was released on 3DS and Windows, and is a very short little 8-bit game featuring characters from Inti Creates titles. This is much the same in Mighty Gunvolt Burst. In the base game, you can play as Gunvolt from Azure Striker Gunvolt or Beck from Mighty Number 9. And see, I told you earlier this season, this wasn't
be
the
back.
last. Yep,
yeah,
not the last we'll see of
will
Beck.
return, yes.
And
I actually, when you said that, I actually thought they're going to make more games with Beck. Not that games with Beck will appear on the show, and they're already made. So I had a different expectation.
You did, yeah. I don't know that they will make more games with Beck unless it's outside of this.
Yeah. By now, you would have heard an announcement,
I think
maybe.
So, maybe. Yeah. We'll see. So that's the base game, but there was a pretty quick 1.1 update that added Ikaro from Galgun. So while not technically part of the base game, I'd always kind of considered that to be part of the original cast. I think maybe because I don't think I had to pay for that edition.
Okay.
And there's also a series of DLC that bring the total of playable characters up to 9 and include more characters from the Gunvolt, Mighty Number 9, and Galgun franchises. So the story of Mighty Gunvolt Burst is different depending on which of the characters you choose to play as. And for the sake of the review, I only played as the first 3, so in general, I will only speak to those 3. But in general, if you're playing as a character from Mighty Number 9, this is a VR training program created by Dr. White. If you're playing as a character from Gunvolt, this is a VR game. And if you're playing as someone from Galgun, this is just a video game of some sort. Mighty Gunvolt Burst, I'm going to call it MGB, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
Follow along. Features an intro stage and 8 stages, all of which feature the bosses from the intro and 8 main stages of Mighty Number 9. But in general, the story is mostly an inconsequential excuse for you to fight bosses from Mighty Number 9. So the story doesn't matter too much.
Okay.
Surprise.
And you like to find a little bit of synergy between your secret game and the featured game, and the emphasis on boss fights here between Mighty Gunvolt Burst and Cuphead is very apparent to me.
Yeah, and even just run and gun in general. Not a very deep synergy here. After dispatching the 8 mighty numbers, you unlock a series of harder levels that put your abilities to the test. This is much like your Dr. Wily Castle.
Yes.
Sort of the same idea.
Your King Dice gauntlet.
It's just not quite as linear, and you can choose to go back to old stages, so that's nice. As you may expect from a game whose roster is made up of characters from 2 Mega Man likes, Mighty Gunvolt Burst is an 8-bit-ish pixel art game and has all of the elements of Mega Man like, right down to the 8 bosses and the linear weakness system. There are 2 primary mechanics that set MGB apart from the rest. The first is the weapon customization, and the second is the burst combo system, which gives this game its name. So I'm going to talk about the weapon customization system first. In MGB, you start the game with 1000 CP, or what I believe stands for customization points. And these custom points will allow you to change the characteristics of your main weapon. So this includes characteristics like how many bullets can be on the screen at once, the trajectory and speed of your weapon, how long these bullets can stay on the screen, the size of your bullets. Do the bullets disappear? Do they explode? And most importantly, you can change the element. So when you beat one of the mighty numbers, you can acquire their element, and then you can equip it and use it on the next boss.
So you're kind of investing these points.
Yes.
You're like on a screen where you're buying, kind of like in any game where you're taking a weapon and you see like little progress bars for different qualities of that weapon, right?
Kind of, yeah. You have to keep the cost within your set number of
like the
custom
1,000 points.
Yeah,
you can't. Yeah.
The custom system also allows you to alter mobility skills that you might unlock while navigating the levels, or other special abilities that your character might possess. So on the more universal, like mundane side of unlocks, you can unlock the ability to reduce your knockback or gain diagonal fire if you press up or down. But there are also special skills that each character will possess that are unique to them. So, for example, Ikaro from Galgun, she can gain the ability to hover with her angel wings, and you can customize how that works as well. Instead of like hovering, maybe you float. Beck can gain his air dash, and you can customize how many times you can air dash. So he doesn't have his air dash automatically, which feels a little bit odd. So that's one of the game's unique mechanics. The other is the burst combo system. And the burst combo system is basically a way to maximize points. The higher combo you get during a level, the greater your score will be at the end. To use the burst combo system, you must simply defeat the minor enemies in the stage while standing right next to them. And then when that enemy explodes in your close proximity, it adds to your burst combo. If you defeat an enemy without being in that burst, your combo goes back to 0. There are a couple of other secondary things that make this game a little bit different from the usual Mega Man-like. First, there are dozens and dozens of items hidden in stages. This isn't like super duper unusual. Like Mega Man Zero especially had a lot of collectibles with the cyber elves and stuff. But this feels a little bit different. You can find different items called modules, and that will add something to the custom system. These are like your special jumps or your diagonal fire and stuff. So like I said, when you're getting Beck's air dash or the ability to have more than 3 bullets on the screen, that's what you're finding. There are items that can increase your maximum custom points by a significant number. So they're just like little diamonds, and they'll add 300 custom points to your total.
Okay. Nice.
And then you can also find pixel stickers, and these are just cute little icons that feature the characters, major and very minor, in the mighty Gunvolt franchises.
Verse.
Yes. And there are over 100 of these. Some of them are in set locations within stages. Other times, these will just be random enemy drops, and you can set these as your save files avatar.
Oh, okay.
Very inconsequential.
So it's like a cosmetic just for you, the player.
Pretty much.
Okay.
And then additionally, on the subject of collectibles, I mentioned that when you clear stages of the 8 mighty numbers, you can select their element. You may also instead collect one of the items that increases your custom points, or in some cases, another pixel sticker. If you pick one when you beat the stage, though, you're not like locked out of gaining those other prizes. If you repeat the stage and beat the boss again, you may pick one of the remaining items.
Oh, I dig that.
So there's a neat little reward system that forces you to like weigh pros and cons, but also doesn't lock you out of anything.
Cool.
It's very cool.
That's nice.
But I think that about covers story and mechanics. And so here are some things I like about Mighty Gunvolt Burst. Nay, things that I actually really like about Mighty Gunvolt Burst.
Nay, love.
Love. In general, the controls feel really great.
Yeah.
Jumping feels pretty good and seems to be just the right height for you to get everything you need while still keeping some things out of reach, sort of like teaching you that your mobility can be changed. Same thing with shooting. The bullets will go just as fast as your fingers are physically able to mash those buttons. And when they aren't, it's because you have too many bullets on the screen. And again, that's something that can be customized away. Something I don't always notice unless it's really bad is your ability to like stop and start motion. really cheap games will have like no build up to your maximum speed or gradual decline to a stop.
Yeah, easing
Yeah.
in the movement.
But MGB has those, and it's just the right amount to create this like natural momentum. And it always feels really good unless you're on ice. So just
the bane of our platforming existence, DiscoCola.
Some games, it's so bad.
Yeah.
It's really slippery.
Unless you're
ice.
Tori too. I do not like ice. Yeah.
Another thing that I really like is actually the ranking system. I mentioned the burst combo and scoring. In MGB, I find the ranking system to be very forgiving. You're graded on the usuals like clear time, damage taken. You can find food items in the level, and if you clear the stage with all of your food items uneaten, those are extra points. But you also have the burst combo coming in. But unlike other games, and especially Inti Create's own Gunvolt games, the ranking system records your highest combo from within the level and not just the combo you had at the end of the level. Like, yes, you want the highest combo possible and you don't want to break it at all, including at the end of the level. But if you're hunting high ranks, losing your combo isn't necessarily the end of the world. And on top of all that, ranks don't really reward you with anything except pride. You get a trophy for getting like 1 S rank, but that's it. And doing just 1 isn't really a huge ask. Otherwise, your ranks are for you. No reward, just personal satisfaction.
I know that with Mighty Number 9, I know I talked about not really caring about ranks too much, but they are tied to trophies. But would you say the feeling of just like that personal satisfaction with the ranks in here is very similar to the Mighty Number 9 ranks? Or
Not
is it
at
better?
all. It feels like much more manageable.
Okay.
And so it's not
Nice.
a frustration. So especially when you like break your burst combo, you can still potentially get an S rank.
Cool.
Like if you managed to get like 13 before you lost it and there were only like 5 more possible
You can
combos to
salvage
get.
things a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah, okay.
I think it doesn't ask for too much like Mighty Number 9 kind of is. And on another related note, the stage selection screen is really great. It lays out all of the information you could possibly need. You can see the stage, a silhouette of the boss, and all of the items that you've collected for that stage. Ranks are there too, but they are secondary, so you have to do an extra button press to view that stage's highest rank. Like,
So if you have shame with getting
Right.
like C ranks, you can hide that. Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
Whoever built this system preferred beating bosses and collecting items for sure. If I'm not a rank hunter, I can just leave those out of sight, out of mind, and I love that.
Nice.
And I am not a rank hunter when I don't have to be.
And it's a grid, right, with all of them on screen
It's
at
not
once?
a grid.
It's a side
it's a scrolling up and down
Up and down,
scrolling.
okay.
But it's not. There's I think a maximum of 15 stages, and it goes pretty fast. So you're not spending too much time. I think the things you are able to customize are really cool. It's like the team looked at all of the Mega Man weapons that ever existed, and they were like, "How can we make it so the player can build their favorite weapon?"
Ooh.
I didn't always do this, but being able to change my weapon from firing in a straight line to firing in a sine wave or bouncing on the ground, like the combinations are endless. There are so many things you can do with the weapon customs. And while I don't always care about all of the pixel stickers, I do like that these are added into the game. It gives me something visual to collect and care about. I definitely like collecting my customization upgrades, like my double jump or whatever, but those don't look pretty. I can't see them. I nab them out of necessity, but viewing my collection of pixel stickers and seeing a unified pixel art style of my favorite Inti Creates characters is very satisfying. On the subject of pixel stickers, another thing I love, this is one thing I love
Using the L word.
about MGB is
The
that
other L word.
I love that the pixel sticker collection is shared across all of your different save files.
Oh, that's sweet.
So if you have a save file for each of the 9 different characters, they all have the same pixel stickers. I was like daunted by the idea of collecting more than 100 stickers for each character,
Yeah.
but I don't have to. Sharing the collection across save files is much more manageable.
This is so random, but I've been playing Diablo 4, And there's a similar thing there where all of your characters in a realm share certain collectibles,
Ooh.
right? You don't have to you get collectibles that increase your stats, and those are just universal across all your characters.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about Diablo, but
Hopefully that still made sense.
rad,
But
yeah.
it's nice. I just dig that. Like the universal settings or things that carry over, just very convenient.
Yeah. I love the boss reward system. I might beat a boss, and the obvious answer is obviously to grab their element, and that is what I did for each initial victory, but an extra 300 custom points might be really tempting. The rewards feel really worth it, but more importantly, they encourage me to play more of the game. Like, yes, I grabbed the element on the first go-around, but I'm definitely going back to at least 2 or 3 stages to grab those extra 300 custom points. That adds a lot of possibility, and add up, 300 extra custom points for each boss, and that's nearly like 3,000 extra custom points.
You start with 1,000,
Yeah.
so you're just multiplying how much you can invest.
Yeah, and that doesn't even count the stuff that's already in the stage. So you can do some really wild stuff with an extra 3,000 points, and this is rarely a big ask because, and here's another thing I like, the stages, with 1 or 2 exceptions, are very manageable in both length and difficulty. There are definitely points of difficulty. It is a Mega Man-like, but it is way more approachable than I could have expected. And then, if I'm not even going after ranks and, Reed not going after burst combos, it's even that much easier. And all of those many likes culminate into one overarching like, and that is that I love when a game wants me to play more of that game because it rewards me with an easier experience by doing so.
Mm-hmm.
It rarely feels like a chore to replay a stage because I'm getting something out of it, and that makes my experience for the rest of the game so much easier. Couple more things that I like. The music is all great. The compositions themselves are almost all from other indie games, but in an 8-bit-like style. But the sound font that they used here is really great, and all the songs sound nice in their 8-bit style. And lastly, I really like the pixel art in this game. Enemies, characters, stages all look like an expertly 8-bit-ish style of their original designs, but the mighty number bosses especially are so vibrant and expertly crafted, and they're just all super satisfying to look at. I do have dislikes with MGB, though I don't dislike some of these things to a great degree. They are dislikes with some of the most marketable features, unfortunately. First, I don't really care about the burst combo system. Between this and Mighty Number 9, it seems like the whole idea was like, let's make a Mega Man game, but you have to get really close to your enemy.
Yeah, it's a weird gimmick
Yeah,
to me.
I don't like that. It's fine if I'm a character that uses a melee weapon like Zero from the Mega Man games, but if I have a ranged attack and I'm being asked to get close, I'd rather just have a close range weapon.
Yeah, exactly.
It just isn't a super fun idea, in my opinion.
Yeah, the trailer immediately touts this as a point blank style action game.
It's super satisfying to mash on that button and just really deplete enemy health, I guess, but I don't know, it's just not a fun mechanic in my opinion. But luckily you don't lose, you only lose points by attacking from a distance. So it's
which
if you don't care about the points, then it's fine. Another thing that I don't always jive with is the customization screen. There are a lot of options, and I'd argue too many. But on top of that, many of those options have sub options with maybe even another sub option after that. If I want to change my trajectory to the sine wave instead of firing in a straight line, I have to first select, wave from a selection of 7 different trajectories. And then I have sub options like wavelength and amplitude.
Yeah.
And each of those gives me another set of options. It can take 8 minutes just to customize the weapon that you want to make.
It reminds me of using complicated effects in After Effects and how there are options with sub options, and there's a science to it, and you have to do trial and error, I imagine, to figure out how all these parameters affect each other.
Right, yeah. And honestly, if the layout was a little bit more like the way Adobe does all of its little sub-screens, it might be a little bit easier to look at. But luckily, you probably only have to do this one time per weapon because the game allows you to save up to 24 customizations. Additionally, unless you're playing as Beck, there's no good way to tell which element is equipped to a said custom weapon without opening and scrolling all the way down to the element option. So, like, if I'm on the boss rush level with Gunvolt, for example, and I'm trying to swap to the next necessary weakness, I have to open up each of my customization slots until I find the right one.
Okay.
Because Beck can change his bullet type, and you can use that visual distinction that will show up on the icon as like, this is the element of this weapon, and the bullet type is just a visual modifier. Gunvolt, Ikaro, and probably the other 9 characters all have the same bullet type, so their icon is the same regardless of...
So you can't tell.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if they could just like at least change the background color of the icon, maybe, to match the element, but that's not happening here.
That kind of thing is something they figured out so long ago with old Mega Man games.
Yeah.
You know, just that quick switching and the quick visual communication of what you're switching to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can quick switch, I think, in battle, but like I said, your bullets all look the same if you're Gunvolt, so you still don't know. Speaking of weaknesses, if you played Mighty Number 9, you will know the weakness order. It's the same, but the game doesn't really telegraph very well when I'm using the correct weakness. There's no special animations or anything, which is not super uncommon in these kinds of games. And I am doing more damage per shot, but I'm not really noticing like major differences in damage when a boss is being shot with their weakness. So if I hadn't looked up the weakness chart, I probably wouldn't know it still.
Those old Mega Man games, it's very apparent. Like, that's something I fell in love with figuring out those weaknesses is the bosses go down in like 6 hits.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow, that's
and
obviously
even if
was it. Yeah.
Even with the older ones where they don't have like special animations, it's like, no, they're getting sunk
Yes.
real fast.
Right.
Other dislikes, I hate hanging from ropes and wires. I don't like this in Mega Man games either, and I don't like it here. I just always hate it. And my last, but still minor complaint is that there are about 4 small sections of the game that I find really difficult, mostly because I get knocked into endless pits over and over and over again. Mighty Gunvolt Burst is essentially the game that Mighty Number 9 probably should have been, and I think that's why it exists. I am so glad that all of these character designs that I legitimately loved get a second chance to shine in this game. If you were looking forward to Mighty Number 9 but found yourself wildly disappointed, I implore you to give Mighty Gunvolt Burst a chance. Don't let Beck on the cover art dissuade you. He was never the problem.
No.
The game,
Don't blame Beck.
He's not his fault. This game is built for all of the different Mega Man-like fans without punishing you for favoring one of those elements over the other. If you're a score chaser, the game has that. If you like collecting items, it has that. If you like making the game harder for yourself by taking more damage and putting less out, creating a greater challenge, you can do that. And focusing on only one of those elements doesn't punish you. MGB is on par with some of the better Mega Mans, and if I hadn't played 2 really incredible Mega Man likes this year alone, I might consider this the best Mega Man like. I don't know that I recommend this to you, Bopo, specifically, but the only reason I don't is actually because of the burst combo concept. I think you would probably not jive with that.
Yeah, because I tried to fall in love with the accelerating stuff in Mighty Number 9, and the dash is awesome, but it's kind of centering the whole experience around that. And here's another example of something like that. So I could maybe see myself playing it, but just from a distance and not caring about that gimmick.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
But I think this game is not only better than I expected it to be, but actually quite great. I give Mighty Gunvolt Burst a Mighty Number 9 out of 10.
Hey, that's actually what I would have guessed. I would have guessed Mighty Number 9 out of 10. Sweet. Also, I'm noticing like this came out in 2017, the same year as Cuphead, which is kind of fun.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So there's another like little synergy. I love the inclusion of all the different characters. It's a fun, inspired idea. And, not a lot of developers and publishers are able to pull off something like that. And so I wish I would see that more, where you're just seeing all these disparate characters from different series being pulled into one experience. So, I was going to ask if you think I would prefer this to Mighty Number 9. I don't know
100%.
if I would like readily play it tomorrow, but I definitely would choose it over Mighty Number 9,
Yeah.
to play. I noticed in the trailer, there's a moment where the player character destroys a wall and finds a secret.
Mm-hmm.
Are you finding lots of those kinds of things in this game?
Most of the stage's items are hidden behind breakable walls. So
Okay.
pretty early on, you can find an item called dowsing, which will sort of alert you if you're nearby one of those breakable walls. You're not really gonna be able to find those easily without just like probing each wall or
Okay.
having the
It's
dowsing
kind of like
on.
classic adventure or Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
where you just kind of have to know where to put the bombs.
Yeah,
sometimes.
a little bit, but dowsing makes it a lot easier and only costs like 100 custom points or something.
Yeah. Or maybe more accurately, it's like old Metroid games
Yeah.
where there's like no tell. It's just, you have to shoot your missiles everywhere.
Yep, everywhere.
Okay, that's fair. I think that's all I had questions on.
Rock on.
Where can you play Gunvolt Burst / Mighty Gunvolt Burst?
You can play Mighty Gunvolt Burst on Nintendo Switch, Microsoft Windows, and Nintendo 3DS if you already downloaded it. And I've played it in the past there. But this time I did play Gunvolt Burst on PlayStation 4 with the Limited Run Games Physical Edition.
My heart sinks a little bit more every time you mention the 3DS eShop closing.
I don't think I even got all the DLC for that game before it shut down. I
man.
wasn't even thinking about it.
I just remember people were having a mad scramble to not only buy those games, but then figure out, how do I get the DLC? I have to play 40 chapters of this RPG to get the DLC, and I have 2 weeks left to do it. Anyway, that's funny.
And sad.
And sad. It is time for my secret game. My secret game is Smushi Come Home.
Yes. I'm so happy.
You're very much aware.
I didn't think you were going to play it this season.
Yeah. I ended up playing it sooner than I originally thought, but this is a game I played back in February. I played the demo during Steam Next Fest, fell in love with the demo, which was like the first kind of major world of the game. Told you about it on this podcast, and you even said to me outside the show, like, yeah, you should play that as a secret game. I'm never going to touch it. I'm going to let you take this one sometime. And so here it is. And I thought this was like fitting as a final secret game of the season because it's about coming home. There's just something poetic about that. So I just sent you a trailer, and you can take a look at that. And Smushi Come Home is a 2023 3D adventure platformer. It was developed by Some Humble Onion, which is the pseudonym of Noah Lone, who basically built this whole game himself. And it was published by Moon Eye Studios. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, play as a tiny little mushroom who's lost in the forest and can't find its way home. Explore unique areas freely at your own pace, chat with friendly inhabitants, and take on different adventures to get back home, end quotes. So, this has a 3D open world. This game, I thought, was completely pixelated, just like from a mandatory standpoint, like when, but I guess over time, Some Humble Onion implemented like different pixelation settings. So you can go into the settings and select one of, I think, 5 different pixelation settings. So you can have the game be super crisp and modern looking, or on the far other end, you can activate a setting called Yo, I Can't See. And it's like in all caps, like, Yo, I can't see. And it is so pixelated that you lose a lot of the detail and stuff. It's kind of more of a novelty setting. I chose to play on the completely crisp end, but I did turn on some of like the moderately pixelated versions of the aesthetics at some points.
Heck yeah.
So I think that's fun.
I want more games with settings like that, to be honest.
I know. But, starting off, Some Humble Onion was visually inspired by both like Wind Waker and A Short Hike for the art direction.
Can see that.
And those games have very different amounts of pixelation and crispness, so he's looking to those games for just like the set dressing, the art direction, the general like approach to the visuals. And Smushi is this mushroom who lives on an island with their siblings Umi, Musho, and Mishu. And you get to know this family for a few minutes before a bird swoops in and attacks the mushrooms.
What the?
And Smushi pushes one of their siblings out of the way and ends up being the one picked up by the bird and is carried away. Very dramatic, inciting incident.
Oh my
here.
God.
Yeah. I mean, you have to get home. You have to get away from home somehow. And so this bird carries Smushi away and drops it into its nest. And from there, Smushi leaves the nest and encounters forest creatures of all kinds. And Smushi has to do tasks for them to find a way home. And most of these tasks are finding a missing object or maybe a missing character. And there are 3 main areas of this game. There's the Garden of Spring, there's the Forest of Fall, and there's the Lake of Bloom. And so once you get through those 3 areas, you can find your way home. And immediately you get this leaf for gliding. You get fish hooks that let you attach to walls and take another jump up a wall. And you also get the ability to sprint for a short time pretty soon into the game. And by helping all these forest creatures, you can get these upgrade items called Spores of Energy and Essence of Wind. And these are increasing your sprint time and the amount of glide time you have. So you get these tools early on, and then you can use them for longer the more you help people.
Nice.
You also get this Allen wrench, and that lets you break open crystal deposits. And you can find green and purple crystals. You're using green crystals to purchase key items from NPCs. And then those purple crystals allow you to unlock skins that you find for Smushi. So you kind of have to find the skins, and then you use the purple crystals to unlock the ability to wear the skins.
Got it. Okay.
And they're basically just different mushroom caps that almost like a hat for Smushi.
Yeah, I'm
but,
noticing different colors here in the trailer.
Yeah, and they're vibrant, they're different shapes, and they are based on different kinds of mushrooms. And Smushi has a mycology journal and collects mushroom encyclopedia entries, kind of. This is very similar to what I saw in Teacup. Teacup had a tea journal.
That's right.
You could learn about different like effects of real world tea ingredients. And it's like you're collecting these encyclopedia pages, but they're very much focused on this subject matter. And here it is all about mushrooms. And the writing in this game, like when you talk to the forest creatures, it's very like energetic and peppy. It's very much like Adventure Time. You know, it's like that kind of like quippy, sort of fast talking that a lot of these characters are doing. It's all text bubbles. You know, there's no voiceover, but you definitely get different emotion with people talking to you in like all caps, and the text moves around. And so there's characterization there too. And yeah, this is a game I've been looking forward to for a while. And what I like about the game is that now that I have gone from playing the demo back in February and now finishing the full release, this game did end up being pretty much everything I expected based on that demo, and maybe a little bit more. Above all, Smushi Come Home is a very gentle and fun adventure. It is good-natured. It is wholesome. It's optimistic. I love the art direction and how it uses everyday items creatively. You jump on these platforms that are like rusted cans. That Allen wrench that you use for mining the crystals, it's referred to as a tool of mining. You know, they never call it an Allen wrench. You find an LED and you use it as a headlamp to explore dark caves in every forest area. And then there's like an NPC looking for rusty old coins. And it's like they're researching them as relics. And they're saying things like, yeah, I think these might be like ancient Frisbees or something, but they're just like coins that fell out of a human's pocket and they're just like all dirty. And so it's a fun way to explore all this stuff. It's very like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids or Toy Story, or even like I was reminded of It Takes Two.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Going all the way back to episode 1 of our show. Like, you remember how It Takes Two took everyday items and just had fun with them. And those are the kinds of ideas that are going on here. I also love that, you know, there are only 3 primary areas, but they're each distinct. There's a word we've used a lot this season, and it's autumnal. We've used it to describe a couple of areas in games we've played. And the second area, the Forest of Fall, since you mentioned back, I think on our Abzu episode, or it was a previous episode, that you love autumn, you love the fall, that's your favorite season. Since you do love that season, I think Forest of Fall would be like a really great vibe just for you. Like, I think that area you would really dig. But also every one of the areas has like caves, and those add a nice like atmospheric difference. There are nice like shadow effects. Once you find that LED headlamp, you're projecting shadows on the walls in really contrasty ways. And then I love the variety in tasks as well. You're doing different favors for these people that you find. You're shooting pebbles at strawberries to knock them down. You're catching honey in a pot from like a bird's eye view. You're doing a platforming challenge at one point to be given a password. And there's someone who's like lost in a cave and you have to go find them for someone else. And so each area is feeling fresh with these different objectives. And on a gameplay side, just like a moment-to-moment platforming note, this game has one of, if not the best gliders I've ever used.
Heck yeah,
in
dude.
a game. When you use the leaf in this thing, your height remains satisfyingly sustained. Like you jump off a ledge, you deploy your leaf, and you haven't like lost much height from deploying that. I've played some games where you kind of drop a little bit.
Yeah.
You stay right up there, which is nice. And as your glide meter runs out, you descend gradually rather than just falling like a
down.
brick.
Yes, dude.
And again, you can upgrade that meter so that you can take the glide for longer. It just feels so good. And in combination with the fish hooks, you can go off of a ledge looking at a wall you want to climb. You get there and then you latch your hooks into the wall and then you get another jump to maybe hopefully get up to the ledge. And so it just lets you climb quickly. It lets you move very efficiently. Tiny little praise. I love that this game knows what I've done already. Sometimes I find an item that a character will be looking for that I haven't talked to yet. And then I find that character and they'll say, I'm looking for this thing. And Smushi will say, oh, you mean this thing that I already found? It doesn't do that thing where it's like, okay, let me find that for you.
And then you
then
just
leave the dialogue and then you talk to them again. So Smushi references things they've done.
Oh, that's so cool. They have like an if Smushi has, then, so cool.
Yeah, conditional dialogue is going on in this. And it's not like happening constantly, but when it does happen, it's just a nice little touch that really shows that some humble onion added that like extra care and attention.
Care to detail. Nice.
Yes. And then the music by Fail Positive is amazing. This is yet another just vibrant soundtrack from this season that I love. We are setting the bar really high with like good soundscapes.
We've been eating good on the radio show, the music radio show.
Right. A lot of ear candy going on. And here is another entry there. I mean, it's like sunny music. It is fitting for nature. Parts of this soundtrack remind me of Mario Sunshine. And it is, you're showing me it's on Spotify? So you can't, so DiscoCola just pulled it up. It's on Spotify. That is nice. I will probably be listening to that in my car as I drive around. So great music. And then I love that this game is also educational when it comes to mushrooms and that mycology journal, right? DiscoCola, have you ever wanted to learn about the Vulvopluteus gliocephalus?
I am terrified of mushrooms.
Well, now you can.
Really set you up there, huh?
Yeah. I was going to say it no matter what. But I love that this is just like a different kind of collectible that doesn't always announce itself. You actually have to touch the mushrooms in the world to collect them. You just like run into them. And the entries show up in that journal. Also, Smushi adds their own commentary beneath the entries. And so you'll get like this really scientific description of the of the mushrooms. And then there's like a little comment from Smushi and it's informal and just goofy.
I think Mutazione does that a little bit too.
I wouldn't
with
be
like
surprised.
A flower journal.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. And it starts to get a little existential too. Because like Smushi starts realizing, wait, I'm finding mushrooms. Wait, I'm a mushroom. And so like, how do you reconcile being a mushroom and collecting mushrooms that aren't like you, that aren't anthropomorphic? So I think that's fun. And then also, just my last little note here is just that this game has capybaras.
Yeah, I saw that.
And they're very fun. Love that. More games need to have capybaras. That's all I'll say. I did have a couple of things that just didn't work as well for me in Smushi Come Home. First is actually something that reminds me of a note that you had in your secret game. The movement feels sometimes quite linear and sudden, especially when you do small movements. You were kind of talking about velocity and how there is easing on the front and back end of movement in that game. And I think this game could use that. When you input a movement, you kind of just you go at the same speed. It's very linear. And so maybe there could just be like more of that movement you see in Spyro. You know what I mean? I wasn't challenged by the game terribly. The difficulty is a pretty straight line. And the game is both very light on story and it's sort of a breeze. And neither of these things are bad. I totally understand that there's an audience for that kind of experience, and everybody could benefit from a breezier experience from time to time. But when both are combined together, it kind of adds up to an experience that could have a little bit more of an impact in the grand scheme of things. And then I just have very minor notes here and dislikes where it's just like there are green crystals you mine that you destroy the rocks and then you collect them. But there are also crystals just sitting loose on the ground. And sometimes you don't always know that they are the green crystals. Sometimes they just look like rocks that are part of the environment. So they could stand out a little bit more. I think there's a little sheen on them, but it doesn't announce itself too much.
Maybe green wasn't the best color in a game where there's lots of green life.
Yeah, or maybe a different shade of green, something like that. And then another minor note. I wish each area had a checklist and like a total crystal counter for completionists. I wish I could go that extra step and know that I have all the purple crystals in an area, for instance. But overall, Smushi Come Home is what I hoped it would be. It is kind-hearted. It's a warm hug of an adventure. And even though you're playing as someone who's lost, there's very little drama, but you're making satisfying progress all the time in these lovely forest environments that are repurposing all these everyday objects in amusing ways. Smushi Come Home takes inspiration from great 3D games that came before, and it shows. I'm going to rate it an 8.5 out of 10.
Oh.
And it is playable on PC, which is where I played it, and Nintendo Switch.
Awesome. I think this game looks adorable. I would love to play it someday. I have a question about variety of characters that you encounter. I'm seeing sort of like a snail. I'm seeing some potato-shaped dude. I can't tell what he is.
Yeah.
What are some of the more identifiable types of characters you're going to see?
I think it's a lot of people who they're all kind of different. There are some people that I don't really know what they are. I can't really tell too much. I would say like the capybaras, you talk to them.
Oh, you talk to them?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're just memorable because of what you do with them and that they are very much focused on a certain chapter of the game. And then there's other unique instances where you're talking to a tribe of rocks. And one of them is just, I think one of them is just talking to you and their speech bubble is just rock, 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 rock. And so there's funny things like that. But then there's large insects that are way bigger than Smushi too.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's hard to pick a favorite or a most memorable because they kind of run the gamut,
All right. Yeah. Let's try and make 2025 the indie year of the capybara. Maybe we'll just have tons of games of capybara.
Yeah, we'll take 2024 to make the games, and then 2025.
Yeah, 2024 I think is already going to be, unless it's this year, the year of the frog. Maybe this year's the year of the frog. Next year's the year of the dog. There's some dog games coming out.
Okay.
And then we'll make it the year of the capybara.
Sounds good. Yeah. 2024 was a low year in capybara games, but then 2025 is where it really hit its stride.
Yeah. So because of The Last of Us, cordyceps became a common household name.
I was like, where are you going with The Last of Us? Okay, got it.
Is cordyceps mentioned in this game?
Cordyceps, I don't remember. It could be one of the genus names in the mycology journal, but I wasn't looking out for it.
Okay.
It's a valid question.
Yeah.
But
it's the only mushroom that's top
Sure.
of mind. And
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it is educational. Yeah, not sure. But that is actually a relevant question for this year. So those are our secret games, Mighty Gunvolt Burst and Smushi Come Home. Let's move on to our review of Cuphead. It is our featured game. So Cuphead is a run-and-gun arcade action platformer first released in 2017. It was developed and published by Studio MDHR, which is a Canadian studio founded by brothers Chad and Jared Moldenhauer. And I think this is where we get MDHR from. It's their last name. It's a lot of the
Yeah, all of the vowels and most of the consonants are just
taken out. But you get the MDHR, I think, from their last name. And at this studio, they employ a bunch of their cousins that are very artistic, and they have like one of their wives works for the studio, and it's a lot of their like close friends working at Studio MDHR. So it's a very like tight-knit family of developers here.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm going to read the game synopsis from the Steam storefront. Quote, Cuphead is a classic run-and-gun action game heavily focused on boss battles. Inspired by cartoons of the 1930s, the visuals and audio are painstakingly created with the same techniques of the era, i.e. traditional hand-drawn cell animation, watercolor backgrounds, and original jazz recordings, end quote. That Steam description tells you everything you need to know. This is a 2D side-scrolling game with hand-drawn characters and backgrounds. The look is inspired by cartoons from 90-ish years ago, which is insane to think about. You play as Cuphead and Mugman, who are two brothers who go to the Devil's Casino, and they get into debt. They play some craps, and they're on a good streak, and the devil offers them an all-or-nothing bet, and they lose. And the devil is going to take their souls, but offers another deal. If they can bring the souls of other debtors, they might be spared. And so this becomes the goal of the game. The brothers' guardian, Elder Kettle, gives them a potion that allows them to fight the debtors. This is how we get the ability to shoot. And you can run around, jump, dash, and parry certain attacks. Cuphead and Mugman go about Inkwell Isles 1, 2, and 3. And in each one, they're battling the debtors in boss fights. There's this overworld map screen from which you select each stage. All the bosses have some kind of identity or theme. I noticed a lot of them are based on like animals, but you get ones that are like a flower. There's one that's a genie. There's a clown.
There's a thespian.
Yes, there's like a stage play one. And these boss fights are taking place on one screen. But there are also traditional run and gun stages that have a ton of smaller enemies, and you're just trying to get from the start to the finish. And in these stages, you can find coins spread around, and you can bring these coins to Pork Rind's shop, a vendor who greets you with a welcome, which is why I opened the show with that earlier.
Took me a minute.
I know. It's a little obscure, but he'll sell you different weapons and charms. The charms in this game are passive abilities. You can equip one at a time. And you also have special attacks you can fire by building up hits on enemies. And so, yeah, you're supposed to just collect all these contracts by beating these boss stages, return to the devil, who may or may not hold up his end of the deal. Also, the devil has a right-hand man named King Dice, and King Dice is sort of the secondary antagonist of Cuphead. Cuphead has sold many millions of copies. It won tons of awards, including Best Art Direction, Best Debut Indie, and Best Independent Game at the 2017 Game Awards. In 2022, we got a DLC expansion called The Delicious Last Course. It was released with an additional island full of bosses, and there was this story about this Miss Chalice character and a new antagonist named Chef Saltbaker. And it introduced the ability to play as Miss Chalice, who has a different playstyle. And it also added new weapons, passive abilities, and parry challenges. Also, in 2022, Netflix released a Cuphead animated series, which has 3 seasons and counting. So Cuphead is culturally well known. It is one of like the more popular games we've featured on Underplayed. And this was our co-op game for season 4. At DiscoCola, I was just wondering if you could help describe the process we took for just playing the game, streaming the game. What was it like to do this as a co-op experience?
Yeah, so what we did was we both met up at my house on Friday nights where we weren't recording in the same weekend, and we would just sit down for 2.5 to 4.5 hours and get through as much of Cuphead co-op as we could. You know, a lot of people will play this as a solo experience because I believe couch co-op is the only option. And I don't know that a lot of people make a lot of time for couch co-op anymore. But I love it, and I am glad that we got to play it this way. So everything that we did in Cuphead, we played through every single level and all of the DLC content in a co-op way.
Yes.
Which usually meant DiscoCola died pretty quick and Bopo just finished the boss.
Yeah, because I've played Cuphead a lot before. I've done like basically 2 full playthroughs, one on Steam, one on PlayStation, and then I've just went back to stages, like some of my favorite stages, and replayed a lot of things. So I came into our co-op experience with a lot of experience. I guess
well seasoned.
I was well seasoned.
Yeah.
Yes, like a Chef Salt Baker treat,
Exactly.
like a Wonder Tart. Playing co-op, we get that different sort of format of interacting with the game. When I'm playing the game solo, I'm not saying anything, I'm not streaming it, but I wanted to play different excerpts from our recordings during this review. And so this is an example of how we added voices to some of the characters that we interacted with.
Good gosh, Cuphead, no! Cried Mugman.
There's a
for
little
he
Mickey
understood.
Mouse in there.
Come on, Mug, panted Cuphead. We have to find the Elder Kettle. He'll know what to do. He's gonna beat your asses is what he's gonna do.
And you'd best be ready for some nasty business. I don't know what voice this is. Take this potion so they won't hang you out to dry. It will give you the most remarkable magical abilities, my boy.
So usually like we're goofy, we're having fun.
Yeah, dude.
But also we're sweating because this game is hard. And then so you were also able to play a little bit of this game on your own time. Can you quantify how much you did outside of our co-op stuff?
Like 3 hours, maybe.
3
I
hours,
played
okay.
a little bit the night before last and a little bit last night. That's all I really had time for, unfortunately.
Okay. A couple years ago, I platinumed the base trophy list on PlayStation. But then in 2022, when the DLC came out, I revisited the game and I got a lot of the DLC trophies, but I didn't 100% it. And in the past few weeks, I actually, on my own time, did go back. I did the Parry Challenge stuff solo. I got A ranks on all the DLC bosses, and then I S ranked one of the bosses on expert mode. So I do have that 100% now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I did also play this game quite a lot on my own, mostly focusing on DLC, but we're going to talk about the whole experience. So DiscoCola, this game was revealed in 2013. It was in development for 5 years. The Moldenhauers had never made a game before Cuphead. They actually quit their jobs and borrowed money against their homes to finish making it.
Oof.
So my question to you, was this risk worth it? And what are your thoughts on Cuphead?
Well, to answer the first question, Cuphead is one of the biggest titans of indie games, so I think it was worth it. Probably. I don't see their
Financially,
finances.
it was worth it. In
But
your
I
opinion.
assume they did all right. But my general thoughts are, thank God that you were there. How long would I have been working on this without you? In Cuphead, one of the things that stands out to me the most is the music. While it isn't necessarily always my favorite kind of music to listen to, I am still endlessly impressed by the fact that someone took this very specific style of music that, by the way, you might only hear on the radio station that we're recording in right now very much sort of would jive with this.
Yeah, it's big band music. It's lots of like brass and woodwind
Yep.
instruments and
Yep.
fast percussion. Yeah.
But I'm so impressed that someone took that very specific style of music that doesn't really persist in modern pop culture, like hardly at all. And they created a huge soundtrack of songs that expertly reflect like not only that musical style, but also match the vibe of the game and encourage you to feel stressed out. So,
And there's a different, like, high energy, stressful song for each and every stage.
Absolutely.
There's like over 50 tracks in the soundtrack.
It's crazy big too. And like, they're not short tracks that loop pretty quickly either. Like, the songs are pretty long. Important info on the map screen is usually more defined, and I really think that's pretty cool. Background elements will have a fuzzier outline, whereas like characters, elements that will damage you, or interactable buildings sort of stand out with sharper lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't watched too much of the like rubber hose style cartoons since being an analytical mind or an adult. But I think that sort of reflects the actual style in those cartoons. In general, backgrounds are like static paintings, and the objects that have animated motion will have sharper lines because they're objects being drawn frame by frame over top of these like painted backgrounds.
When as a kid or as an adult, anytime in your life, whenever watching something like that, did you ever try to like anticipate when a certain object would move in one of those animations because you could just tell it was rendered differently, it was drawn differently?
I haven't, no, because it's not something I noticed until until recently, and I haven't watched too many of those cartoons since. So, in general, I love the controls. Auto shooting is great, and eventually became like one of my favorite things in Mega Man games that offered it. Shooting in any of the 8 directions is great, especially for weapons that have sort of like special motion traits, like the crack shot or roundabout. When you're shooting in all 8 different directions, you can get some really wild coverage there. The jump feels great. The dash feels awesome. And it feels like almost perfect for the pace of the game overall. But I especially loved playing as Miss Chalice. I love dashing to parry instead of the jump.
Yep.
I love the double jump.
Yes.
And I usually forget that I can duck in this game, but Chalice gives me a stronger encouragement to remember ducking exists because I can then do an invincible dodge roll, which is awesome.
Yeah, you get the dodge roll, you get the double jump, you get the dash parry, you get an extra hit. You get all those things in exchange for that charm slot.
Exactly. And most of the time, it's worth it for me because I need that extra jump. I love that the pause screens and other menu screens are like so satisfyingly in style with everything else. Everything about the visuals in this game are like cohesive and consistent. I absolutely love the boss designs. In general, I play run and gun games like Mega Man to get to and experience the bosses and their designs and their patterns. But that's what Cuphead is at its very core. A game with loads and loads of unique bosses. All of them are pretty visually distinct, and I love seeing how each one is going to shift into its different phases of the fight, sometimes in really grotesque ways, and I love that.
Morbid ways.
It's so awesome. I love that. But just, again, another overarching love for this game is that my favorite thing about the game is that incredible visual art style and how dedicated the game is to that style at every turn and in all of the details. The last thing I really like about this game are the different weapons available to you. There's a unique variety, and no two feel exactly alike. Some are similar, but no two feel like they accomplish the exact same things. So this allows you to strategize with each boss and maybe try something new on a revisit. Maybe you'll fall in love with a new weapon. I did have my 2 favorites, though, and I usually stuck with those and tried to make those work for all situations when I could. And that did work in most cases.
I think there's a good balance of some weapons that are more universal and then others that feel a little more special for certain scenarios.
Yep, exactly.
And sometimes I'm going into stages with one of the former and one of the latter, and it's a good kind of balance.
Yeah. And as you like learn more about the boss's patterns, you can strategize a little bit better. I really like the DLC package. I already mentioned how much I love playing as Chalice, but I think the DLC levels are like really hard levels, but they also feel like they belong to the rest of the world. There's this secret boss that feels incredibly grand in a number of ways. And though I hated actually doing the fight in practice, it is really spectacular, and I love it.
The one that switches back and forth.
Yeah, and it's what a DLC should include, is just this like bizarre boss fight that feels like you're fighting God or something.
Yeah,
It's
there's
so
a lot
cool.
of like, it's anime. It's like kind of anime-ish. But there's a lot of like interesting lore and miscellaneous tasks in that DLC that aren't in the base game.
But I love the parry challenge, and I think I enjoyed that the most out of our co-op time together. We were so in sync throughout it, and it felt like we were moving as a team instead of like trying to metaphorically fit two people on a small dirt bike, like when you're both trying to hit the same parry item or something.
Yes. And it got to the point where like we're spending a lot of time on the parry challenges, especially the gauntlet, to do all of them in a row without dying. That's a pretty tall ask. And I remember just like getting loopy because it was taking so long. We dedicated a whole play session just to this one challenge.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to play another little moment.
Oh,
actually.
let's hear it. Yeah.
This is called Getting Slap Happy in Cuphead.
Dude, we're gonna totally drop the ball on the queen.
Shut up. Don't talk about it.
I can't even. Fancy. Nice.
Wow.
All of that was just on the section with pawns.
The pawns. The pawns are the hardest one, I think, as
The
far as
first
working
one.
as a team.
It's good they come first, then. Yeah. Anyway, continue.
So yeah, there are things that I struggle with Cuphead. There's quite a few things actually, but I'm not. It'll sound like I'm tearing this game down, so just buckle in. It's not as bad as it sounds.
Okay.
In general, and this is probably the biggest one, I think the game is asking just a little too much from the player. Like, yeah, the point is that it's hard, but damn, like some of these are just unreasonable, man. They're just not cool. Like, come on, give me a break. Great as the animation is, I do think that the introduction to each level is a little bit too long. If I'm failing often, and I am definitely failing over and over and over,
Yeah.
I have to sit through that little intro.
The WALLOP
A lot.
thing. Yeah, where they're kind of pulling up their pants and the boss is entering. And it
Drinking
says
their
WALLOP.
own brain. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Takes
Okay.
a little bit too
I
long
hear ya.
for how often I am dying.
Especially because like when you fail, you get the screen that shows you the progress of how far you got on the boss, and it pauses for a nice moment.
Yeah.
And that's where you choose to retry. It's not retrying on its own. You have to input, yes, I want to retry. And so I think that probably is enough of a break.
Yeah.
And then if I could just start again immediately, that'd be nice. Maybe they could add that as a toggle. Maybe you could toggle off the WALLOP like intro animation.
That'd be great.
And just save like the 5 seconds.
I'd take it. I spent a lot of time just the other night, like working solo, just sitting through that a lot. I was just like,
Yeah.
oh God, come on.
Just take another breath. That's what they're saying. Take another
I
breath.
don't like to breathe. I think that some of the map screen coins are too well hidden. So this is obviously a very small complaint because there's only like 5 or something. I love that there are coins on the map. I think it gives more life to the whole Cuphead world, but some of them are just too well hidden. This game is all about learning patterns and how to dodge those patterns. But I've found that even within the patterns, there's still a lot of like randomness. I played some of the run and gun levels the other night, and the spawns would be like identical most times I played, but then maybe 1 out of 6 times I play the level and the enemies show up at different times in different spots, or maybe they'll be absent altogether.
Mm.
And so this is affecting my like muscle memory and really just slowing me down or punishing me for something that could easily be unintentional in the game. I honestly can't tell if it's intentional or not, but some of those spawns are just different from a usual consistent playthrough.
I've watched interviews with the Moldenhauers, and they've talked a lot about how randomization and like not repeating things is a philosophy of theirs. They didn't speak specifically to the run and gun stages, but I imagine they did design those run and gun stages to be like the boss stages where they want things to be mixed up a little bit, because they talked about hard games, like the philosophy of making your game difficult, because there's two kinds of hard games. There's the hard game like Cuphead, where you learn tells and you kind of just learn everything that a stage or a boss could do, and then you can adapt to things when you start to see tells show up. But then there's hard games like Battletoads, where Battletoads has a section where you're on the motorbike going super fast, like weaving through these barriers at like superhuman speed. And the only thing you can do there is just memorize the speed of moving your stick or your D-pad or whatever back and forth. And it's kind of the same every time. So they're very much taking the former approach.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Parrying in general does have some weirdness. I don't love it as a level ranking metric, mostly. Many times it's not an issue, but on levels like Werner Vermin, you only have like a couple of things that you can actually parry. And like some of those things don't even actually like count toward the parry score because they're mobility based parries. And on top of that, the pattern that Werner will roll out is highly inconsistent. So if your damage output is actually really high, you're removing yourself from the chance to parry things, and then you're ultimately losing out on that higher rank.
Yeah.
Like I performed really well against him the other night, so well, in fact, that I only got one parry in the whole fight and ended up with a B rank.
Gotcha.
And that was really disappointing.
There's definitely like some stages where I'm annoyed with that. For me, it's like Cagney Carnation. That's the flower one where it's raining the ones down from the sky. And how the parrying works is you have to like jump usually on top of something. And here's something you parry that's falling on your head. And so that's hard to react to. Yeah. There's like, it's different every stage.
Additionally, as a co-op experience, parrying is where the chaos ensues, I find. When you parry, the game almost like slows down to a stop, and this can end up eating some very essential like jump or dash inputs for your partner.
Yeah.
But on top of that, if you're parrying off of one of those like mobility-based parries, the recharge time on that parry may ultimately doom your partner. I feel like if your boss's HP can dynamically shift based on active players, I think that maybe parrying can shift to ease some of that chaotic experience too.
We were both having a little bit of frustration there where there's the obvious slowdown or we both want to parry something and only one of us does it and then the other gets hit.
The other has to jump off the cliff and sacrifice themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Or even just like, King Dice throwing those cards at you and you have to parry on those to get through. And I don't know how you'd do that co-op.
Yeah, I think ultimately I just like killed myself and let Popo do it. I don't remember for sure, but that was generally the consensus of like, okay, well, if this gets to be too much, DiscoCola, just go off in the corner. It was unsaid. We didn't say it. I think some hitboxes are in favor of the bosses. As an example, I was on the skull section of the Phantom Express. And I was shooting my charge shot upward into his big, stupid skull. And it was just off to the side and flew off into the ether. However, I'm confident that if my own body was in that exact same position as my charge shot, I definitely would have taken collision damage. On a similar note, it can be hard to discern at any given time what you're actually meant to be aiming at. Again, I'm thinking of the Midnight Express, Werner Vermin, when the cat comes in. What do I hit? Yeah, what do I hit? Like it visually looks the same as everything else on the screen. It is the cat's big dumb head, like obviously, because it's right in the center. But
you're reminding me of how I felt when I first played the game in like 2017, but once you learn these things, it's just kind of something you carry with you. And I definitely remember that feeling. Yeah. Like it's something you overcome, but only by playing the game multiple times
Mhm.
and just memorizing it.
So Cuphead is a game that is adjacent to Mega Man likes in its gameplay and commitment to bosses. It removes the platforming stages, collectibles, and weakness system for the most part. While that's definitely not a bad thing, and many levels in Mega Man likes can feel like a waste of a time or a drag, many of those elements that are removed are actually some of my favorites. And even though I chose to synergize my secret game on this front as a Mega Man like, I did not approach Cuphead as a modified version of a Mega Man like. I'm just saying what is removed and why I missed those things. I played this as a platformer with challenging bosses and incredible art direction, and that's exactly what I got. While I probably would have played any genre that featured this art direction, I am glad it was a platformer. However, I am frequently getting frustrated with many of the bosses, but overall, I am motivated to press on eventually, even if I need to cool off for a minute. I think Cuphead has definitely earned its place as a titan of indie games. It's not my favorite like it is yours, but I am still quite fond of it, and I will always love that we played this together. When I look at other games with this score, it's somewhere in the middle of those. I give Cuphead also a 9.0 out of 10.
Oh, okay. That's actually maybe a little higher. I might have expected an 8.5 from you, but that's awesome. And
Well, yeah, I looked at other 8.5s and like 9.0s. Like, I like it more than Spiritfarer, but I don't, like it as much as, let's say, Death's Door.
okay. Yeah, that sounds fair.
9.0 is right.
Nice. Well, yeah, I know a lot of that is just the experience of playing the game. I loved playing this game with you. And yeah, like you might say, I carried a lot of the stages and stuff, but you were there reviving me on a lot of stages that I finished,
Yeah,
right?
that's another thing that I should put in the likes real quick is like being able to revive on co-op. I love that in like those beat 'em up games that you have.
Yeah.
And this like adds the mechanic where if you die multiple times, like your little spirit ghost flies away even faster each time you die.
Yeah, so it is a nice crutch, but only for like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And then it's just impossible to parry. So I love that adds that dynamic sort of, I need to be offensive, but I also need to look out for my partner if they get down to 1 HP.
Yeah.
And so we were doing that for each other, and I just loved that experience. And thank you for giving me the experience of that, because I hadn't really played through the whole game in co-op. So yeah, a lot of that experience informs what I have to say, but I'm also just looking at Cuphead from the perspective of someone who's played it several times now. And this is a difficult review for me to do because this is probably the game I have the most love for of anything we've reviewed, right? So you can already guess what my score is going to be.
I already wrote it down.
So now I'm going to, now I'll build to that, but I'm not going to probably mention all the things you might be expecting. But what I like about this game, pretty much everything, I mean, I have to, if I'm going to call it my favorite indie game. I'll also note the amazing soundtrack like you. Like I'll start here. The music, it adds a ton of identity to the stages, and it makes the action so lively. Every time you play a stage, you hear a slightly different instrumental solo in that song, which is something I learned watching a short documentary about the game. Like you're going to hear a different instrumentalist give a solo if you last long enough in the stage. It's the kind of difference that shows so much, again, care and attention, but it's like not so noticeable. You might notice it subconsciously. And that's how the game is staying fresh with every attempt. It's randomizing the attack patterns, but it's also doing things like changing the soundscape subtly. And so that really keeps things from getting stale when you're trying to beat all these bosses dozens, hundreds of times. The visuals are so insanely good. I have favorite character designs, but I don't think any are weak. They're all strong. It's just a matter of what are my favorites of all of these strong designs. All the characters express imagination like old cartoons. I'm going to give a couple examples of this. There's Jimmy the Great, who summons a character called the Cuphead to sort of mock you. This genie is doing things that you would expect a genie to do. Like they're attacking you, but they're being a little goofy and they're mocking you. And Wally Warbles gets salted and peppered when you defeat him. He's on the gurney, and then the two birds carrying the gurney start salting and peppering him when you win. A DLC boss here, Esther Winchester, is using that vacuum to suck up all the gold and cash in the Wild West setting.
Right.
But then she gets sucked into the vacuum herself and gets cooked into sausages, which still fight you. It's going back to what you said about the grotesque
Yeah, that
animations.
was easily the most unsettling.
And so all of these fun visuals are telling a story. They're not just beautiful. They are telling you these micro stories wordlessly. And I think that's fascinating. There's another example of this really quickly in the DLC. When you do the King's Leap parry challenges, you encounter the Rook, who is daydreaming about a guillotine. And this is where I'm going to throw in another excerpt from our playthrough.
Oh, dang it. How far did we get?
We were further last time.
What is in that thought bubble? It's like a
A
little...
little Mistress Guillotine.
It is.
Yeah.
It looks like a Betty Boop guillotine.
Kill the bourgeoisie for me, Daddy. How's that? Is that too much?
Is that a Betty Boop
No.
guillotine impression?
No, of course not. That's just what a kinky little guillotine would ask for.
A kinky little guillotine. If this were like episodic and we were uploading VODs to YouTube, that would be the name of this one. A kinky little guillotine.
So I love that there are all those amusing examples of the visual storytelling. They happen up and down in the game. So the visuals and the music together, they feel like they come from a time capsule. You know, they feel very authentic. There are other details about the visuals I love, like the painted backgrounds. The painted backgrounds are kind of more tinty, and they add nice contrasts, like you said, to like the foreground stuff. And so they're all just, you know, beautiful. There's that painterly style to them that feels intimate. It feels like, wow, someone actually did this by hand. And that feels really personal. And it's going back to Studio MDHR being just like such a close family. They're an intimate group, and they're making intimate art to share with people. Cuphead is all about learning and overcoming. You know, you're learning tells, you're memorizing attacks, you're strategizing that loadout according to the enemies and what you feel are your own strengths. And I find that most loadouts are viable for most situations. So I can beat a level with a certain loadout, and I can probably have pretty good luck going into the next level with that loadout, especially because I now have experience with that loadout. And maybe I can tweak things from there, but I can kind of just keep going with that same setup. And when I surmount these challenges, it makes me feel so good about myself. My favorite overworld map is in this game, I think.
Yeah.
It's got that intimate, painterly look. Everything is presented clearly with no doubt about what's what, too. So those are my likes with Cuphead. I could probably just keep going and going, but I will go to my minor dislikes. These are minor notes. I note the smoke bomb, which is a charm that I find myself using all the time in the base
whole
game.
Yeah.
The smoke bomb is, I think, an overpowered charm. It basically lets you
shut your mouth.
It basically lets you dash, and you become invisible. You can go through enemies who are coming toward you, and I guess it does kind of work like Chalice's role, right? But it's more dynamic because you can do it in the air, you can do it on the ground. And it just breaks certain challenges and makes them like really easy. And so I wish some of the other charms were more appealing or just were at that level of usefulness. Using the special, this is when you build up your cards, your card power. You get to the 5 cards built up, and then you can unleash a really powerful attack. Sometimes when you exit this animation, you end up getting hit because during the animation of doing the attack, a projectile has entered the scene and you couldn't foresee it. And now you're just going to take the hit.
Mm-hmm.
So I just find myself sometimes getting that accidental hit after using the special. So it makes you become more mindful about finding that dull moment to start that special attack. And I wish I could just do the special attack without having to think about that, and that maybe I get a few extra iframes afterwards or something. And then I also note the dropped frames when parrying in co-op. We're getting our parries eaten. I want to be able to enjoy that part of the game just like I do in the base game with you. That's all I note for dislikes, really. Overall, Cuphead is a game that, like 6 years later, still doesn't feel real to me. It feels like an impossible game. Like, I don't know how you make this game. It is a one-of-a-kind, prime example of pure polished gameplay. I think it's the epitome of the just one more try idea I find so alluring with arcade games. When I play it, I am understanding the patterns. I'm defeating the bosses. That makes me feel powerful. I can look back after finishing the game, and I feel this intense amount of satisfaction in seeing where I began and how far I've come. And along the way, I enjoy the stunning visuals. There's a vivacious soundtrack and crystal clear presentation. It's nearly impossible for me to find flaws with this game. Cuphead is currently my favorite indie game I've ever played. I rate it a 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10, baby.
So,
yeah, I already had that written down.
Yeah, very predictable. I even told you, during our streams, this is my favorite indie game. I think about it sometimes when I'm not playing it. It's just part of my body. Like I said during the Limbo episode, it's part of my body.
It's part of your body. It is inside.
It is inside. I want to go back to our co-op experience. I want to talk about best moments from our co-op experience. What are you taking away as like highlights or just elements of doing this as a co-op playthrough that you enjoyed the most?
I learned a lot about just the bosses in general by playing with you. So that's definitely something. But mostly, I think the height of what I considered our playthrough experience was during that parry challenge, because we were coordinating. We were like, even sometimes in an unspoken way, like when we were up against the knight, like there were certain tells that Bopo would do, and then there were certain tells that I would do as Chalice. And like eventually that became unspoken. Like,
yeah.
So whenever the knight was doing this animation, oh, that's Bopo. And whenever it was doing the other one, it was me.
Yeah.
And eventually we even like found a way to sort of coordinate extra hits on that too.
Yes.
And,
that was so satisfying.
Modified our play style. So
it helps that we're playing it like 100 times. But yeah, when you talk about it enough and you figure out the groove of your strategy, you can just do that every time.
Yeah.
And it works.
And we were we were so in sync, and I can't remember a time I've played like a multiplayer game where I felt like that, where we were actually working as a team.
Yeah. It's a special moment. I'm going to carry that with me for a long time. Again, I just loved that experience. There are times where I finish the level, by myself because your ghost, I couldn't get to your ghost.
Yep.
Couldn't revive you. But I loved the times when we were able to actually finish the level together. This happened like quite a few times.
Yeah.
And here is another excerpt. This is when we were fighting Briny Beard on Inkwell Isle 3.
So I remember that fight.
One of the later fights in the base game. Here is how we finished it.
You might have it. Oh no, couldn't avoid that. Dude.
Yes.
Dude.
Hell
Nicely done.
Hell yeah.
Nicely done. I like that death animation.
So, there were other times, like I think the theater one we did together. I think like a lot of the later ones we did, just because by that point we were both really practiced with the game. We were in the groove of working with each other. Love that. But then there were also times where we just had sudden deaths, like deaths where we both dropped out. We either died at the same time virtually, or one person's on their own and they just get hit by something out of left field. And here is our last little sound bite to play. This is Dying to Grim Matchstick. This is the dragon.
I knew it.
Yes.
I knew it was him.
I think this is the final stage. Uh-oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, he takes up
Be
so
careful.
much of the screen.
Be careful. This gets so weird and hard. Oh, man.
no.
You got
Oh,
it.
no.
You got it. Use it. Oh, I should have used my special and I didn't. You got this, dude. Dude, first try.
So that was when Grim unleashes that flamethrower attack just out of nowhere,
Yep.
and melts us. So,
Ugh.
any other favorite moments?
I really loved getting to King Dice with you, because I would have been totally lost without you. So that was a great experience to just like watch your expertise really shine. I loved playing that with you, and I think I would have been so angry if you weren't there.
Yeah, this is the gauntlet of many bosses before you face one of the most surprising bosses in the game. You know, King Dice just starts fighting you once you get to the end of his board. You're rolling the dice over and over. And if you don't know about it, he'll kill you fast, and then you have to restart the whole thing. And I looked up a lot about this whole stage online when I first played the game. So I'm glad you didn't have to spend time doing that,
Yeah,
like I did.
I will still have to do that in a minute, but yeah, just the whole thing overall, I suppose.
And then, there's the run and gun stages, and these were not as fun for me because I think they're objectively harder in co-op, because you both have to sort of go together.
I think that the one on the pier especially is
One on the pier, yeah.
so hard.
Damn you, Captain Crustacean. Perilous piers is frustrating. It's frustrating in solo mode, so I didn't have fun with that for the pacifist run either.
Yeah.
Like that one is bad. And then Treetop Trouble. This is one of the early ones. This is like a rudimentary level. And just because it is so vertical, when one of us gets hit, the other one wants to come back and like revive them. And it really messes with the flow of the enemies coming at you. And so co-op just takes that really simple like aisle one level and multiplies the difficulty. So yeah, I don't know. I guess run and gun stages I can point to as just being inherently more intuitive when you're playing by yourself.
Yeah.
And then another thing I note is just that we had some pretty fun interactions from the chat, right?
Yeah.
People coming in to talk to us. We had someone helping us during Cuphead, giving us hints. So I want to give a shout out to Michael Grutch Jr. for jumping in with like advice, and like that was great to read between deaths and stuff.
Yeah. I really appreciate it. I didn't do all of the things because it was asking for skills I didn't have, but
right.
I do really appreciate it, and that did help with a lot of other bosses for sure.
Yeah, I remember a lot of the advice being like Chalice focused, which is who you played as. So, I was leaving that all up to you as far as whether you wanted to implement that. I guess we've mentioned differences between co-op and solo quite a bit. But I think I would also note that some things take more hits in co-op, like the King's Leap parry challenges. Those pawns that you do in solo mode, they just take one hit. In co-op, they take 2 hits. So I think that's harder. But then you get to the end of the gauntlet, you get to the queen, and I think the queen is easier with 2 people.
Yeah.
Because you can spread yourselves among the cannons.
And yeah, it divides her focus.
It does.
It's most of the attacks are all just like coming from one source. So very much easier, I think.
DiscoCola, do you have a favorite boss in the game? And if so, why do you love that boss?
One of the ones that stands out, like if you play a word association game and you say favorite boss, the first thing that pops into my head is actually Sally stage play, because I was just right away, I clicked with that one, and it felt so intuitive. I knew what to do, and I don't think we did it on the first try, but it was like second or third.
Yeah, you clicked with that one immediately.
I got it. Visually, I think Hildeberg's like last phase specifically, just like stands out in my mind mentally, just based on how it looks.
Yeah, she turns into the half moon thing.
Crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Totally nuts. One of the coolest things I've seen in a game.
Yeah. I don't even know like what she is. She's just kind of everything.
Yeah.
She's not like a carrot, she's like this weird looking.
She's like a Zeppelin lady,
but then she turns into that moon. And so like, what's the explanation there?
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's fun.
I like Baroness von Bon Bon, and I just, in general, overall, I like stages that sort of like can throw one of 3 different minor enemies at you. Like,
Mhm.
Bon Bon has the gumball head guy or the jawbreaker thing.
Yeah, or the chocolate.
Yeah.
There's 5 of them, and each attempt you get 3 of them. So
Right.
you'll never see all of them in one attempt, which is fun.
And like Ribby and Croaks does something similar with their like slot machine and platforms. I kind of like stuff like that where
Yeah.
it throws one of, 3 different things and it has a tell.
Yeah,
And
it's
you-
definitely random.
Yeah.
It makes them feel fresh every time. And I remember telling you, oh, Ribby and Croaks, watch out for the red
The red ones.
one. And we
yeah.
didn't get that one as much. And I was happy to. Oh, and also the orange one sucks. But yeah.
All of them suck except the green one.
green one's manageable.
So those I think are my favorites. How about you, Bopo, Mr. Experienced Cupheader?
I point out 3 that I really like. My first one is many people's least favorite, or one of their least favorites. Edgy. Grim Matchstick. This is the dragon.
Hate that one.
I love Grim Matchstick because it has very cool designs. It has very distinct phases. And there's that spinning tower in the background. That's actually like a model that they photographed in real life.
Oh.
So you see it spinning around. They actually took like 180 photos of that and stitched them together to make sort of a stop motion look.
That's pretty cool.
So it sounds like I like this one mostly for just the visuals. That has-
Visually, it's very appealing.
that has a lot to do with it, but also I just appreciate that you can look at each of the 3 phases and they are so distinct and you're doing different things in each one. And then Captain Briny Beard.
It's another good one.
I love stages where there are sidekicks to the boss. Like the boss is intimidating this big thing, and then they have all these like little cronies throwing junk at you. And that's happening in Captain Briny Beard. You've got the squid, you've got like the shark, you've got the barrel thing up on top, you've got the
Squid gun, octopus gun thing.
the squid is filling your screen with ink. You've got like the dog fish things
Oh,
coming at you.
yeah. I forgot about that.
And so it turns into multitasking. It turns into like almost like a game of like Bop It. You know what I mean? Like where it's just getting faster and faster.
Yeah.
And then Cala Maria, it's probably my favorite stage. It has one of my favorite songs. This one, again, has awesome aquatic sidekicks. There's the seahorse that shoots water up at you, and he goes, no. And, he's so cute. I love him. There's a little turtle. There's tons of fish and like puffer fish. And also she has some of my favorite animations. Like she gets electrocuted by the eels. She dances back and forth with
I
her
love that
hands, singing
dance.
it.
I do love that dance.
And she turns into the, not Gorgon.
Gorgon Medusa?
Gorgon Medusa. Yeah,
yeah.
it turns into the Medusa thing. So just fun ideas are going on there. And that's my list, I think.
Rad.
And then I wanted to ask you, what does Cuphead do that you want to see in more games? Because I had specific points for this. I think Cuphead does certain balances of things in a way that you don't see in other games. Do you have anything like that you'd like to see more in the world?
I think just in general, like more iconic boss designs. I'm thinking of games in the sort of Metroidvania universe where, especially if it leans more on the Castlevania visual design, like bosses can look sort of samey, but like Cuphead, no one boss looks anywhere near
They're
identical.
very distinct.
So
yeah.
just a greater focus on boss design variety.
Yeah, I would like to see more of playing with the balance of special moments like boss fights. Sometimes the boss fights feel like a main attraction in games and you have to build up to it. And here they're just given to you, maybe except when you take a distraction and do those run and gun stages, but you're just jumping into the boss fights. I think it'd be fun to see more boss rush type games like this. I'd love to see more watercolor backgrounds.
Oh, yeah.
Just more art that's intimate, that feels handcrafted. And then having a secondary antagonist like King Dice. I think this adds quite an interesting layer to the end game. It's not just you're doing all of these boss battles, getting these contracts, and then going to the devil, and the devil's the final fight. there's a swerve kind of with King Dice where you go to his casino and it's a pretty lengthy level and a lot of people get stuck on it for a long time. And it keeps the ending from feeling formulaic, I think. So I like that he's this right-hand man of the devil and he gets his own solid, like really chunky part of the game at the end. The last thing I wanted to mention was the Cuphead show on Netflix, which I've seen maybe like half of season 1 of this, and then I dropped off because it just wasn't my kind of like writing and humor to keep my interests. But you, DiscoCola, have watched the whole thing, and I'm curious like about differences. I'm curious about your thoughts. What do you think of this show?
I think, in general, what you're saying makes sense about dropping off. That sort of like humor persists throughout. And the first season especially is sort of like a adventure of the week. There's no like through line that shows up in every episode. It's like the two end caps of the season are the ones with the story. Otherwise, it's Cuphead and Mugman getting up to their antics and Elder Kettle having to deal with the consequences. But seasons 2 and 3 do start to venture more into a storyline. They introduce Chalice, and Chalice becomes actually a really big part of the storyline and overall resolution of season 3, which the show is not canceled at this point, but it seems like season 3 is the end.
Oh.
And I think it's an appropriate end. I wouldn't add another season to this.
Okay.
I think that would be a bad idea, honestly. So eventually, like, I do find that the show gets really good. It does not focus on many of the bosses from the game. Maybe a third of them show up as focuses in certain episodes. And those are fun episodes because you get to see these bosses that you're familiar with, and it adds depth to their personality. So, for example, Briny Beard is in an episode. He's not an antagonist or anything toward Cuphead and Mugman, but he's offering them a ride, I think. But he's going to go see Cala Maria because he's in love with Cala Maria.
Oh.
Cala Maria is like a classic siren. She is not interested. She just wants to draw them in and then murder.
Nice. I like that it's playing with those conventions. Yeah,
exactly. And so it's nice when those characters do show up, and rarely they're, bosses, antagonistic. Ribby and Croaks show up a couple times. They're probably the most prominently featured of the boss characters. But other bosses maybe show up as Easter eggs occasionally. Like Sally Stageplay shows up a couple of times kind of in the background, or maybe slightly more prominently featured, but never gets to the point of like being a boss character or a focus or anything. So there's a lot of Easter eggs in the show for people that have played the game. But in general, it is very different. And even like down to Miss Chalice, you sort of get the vibe in the game that Miss Chalice is like centuries dead, like long time ago.
She's a ghost, yeah.
In the show, she is an orphan that is maybe only a little bit older than Mugman and Cuphead.
Oh.
She's still dead, but she is pretty contemporary.
Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, I don't think I got far enough to see some of those positives you were pointing out, so maybe I'll return to it. The episodes are short. I hope they are done with season 3 because it sounds like that's a good stopping point. And the show had great momentum. Like it was popular. They pushed out 3 seasons quite quickly.
Yeah.
So I think they probably had a show that was popular. Like I'm sure it had its audience. So I might revisit it someday. So thank you for educating me about that. And I think that will do for this edition of Underplayed. Next season, we will have another co-op game like Cuphead, and it will be, I think, my turn to pick the co-op game because we counted Cuphead as your pick for season 4. So we're going to go back and forth. And I already have a game picked out for the co-op slot.
You've had this picked out for like most of the season.
I have. And I don't think it's going to change. It's kind of been the same game. So I'm excited about it. I think it'll be a different sort of format than Cuphead. So it'll probably require more communication and coordination. But in different ways.
Okay.
Than Cuphead. So that is our review of Cuphead You can play it on PC, Mac, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. DiscoCola rated it a 9. I rated it a 10. That's the end of this episode of Underplayed. You can find more of our episodes at kzum.org/underplayed and on common podcast services such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Our music was composed by Jack Rodenberg. Our art comes from Onimochi. Underplayed is on Instagram, Threads, and formerly Twitter at UnderplayedPod. You can find me in those places at Bopo, that's BO_PO, and check out that same handle on the GG app where you can see my game lists and what I'm playing at the moment.
I am on all of those platforms as well, including technically Instagram, though I haven't used it yet, as at DiscoCola, so you can find me there. And on the GG app where I am updating my top 100 games of all time. And hey, look for us on Twitch as Underplayed Podcast, because we will probably start playing this other co-op game in between seasons.
Yes, and next time we will be reflecting on the 30 games we reviewed for Season 4 and planning our featured games roster for the upcoming Season 5, which will probably start premiering in early 2024.
January of 2024.
Until then, everyone, keep on playing.